Carter Brooks looked through the plastic blinds of his office with a shaking finger. Sweat soaked his expensive suit. Right outside his glass door sat Nia. She was 25, beautiful, black, and looked completely calm while she typed an email. Nia did not even need this job. She already had plenty of her own money and only worked because she loved her career. Carter touched the tight stitches on his split lip. His bruised jaw still hurt badly from 2 days ago. Back then, he thought he was the most powerful man in the building. Now, he was like a prisoner. He could still hear the loud crash of his glass desk shattering. That happened when Nia's husband, a scary 28-year-old Korean Mafia boss, slammed Carter's face into it because Carter had grabbed her wrist. After that night, the Mafia boss quickly took control of the company's board members. Carter was trapped. He was still the boss on paper, so the public wouldn't panic, but he actually owned nothing. He could not fire Nia, and he could not run away. The billionaire was completely defeated, and he was totally afraid of his own secretary. 6 months ago, Nia finally decided she had enough. Carter had always been toxic and controlling, trying to rule her life just like he ruled his multi-billion-dollar company. When they were dating, he thought his wealth meant he owned her. But Nia was a proud, independent woman. She dumped him, packed her things, and walked away from his personal life without shedding a single tear. Shortly after the breakup, she met Renji, a powerful and protective man who treated her like royalty, and the two were happily married. Carter, however, could not handle the rejection. His massive ego was completely shattered. He was consumed by rage because a woman had dared to choose her freedom over his billions. Since he could no longer control her in his home, he decided to trap her in his workplace. Just a year earlier, while they were still together, Carter had convinced Nia to sign a highly restrictive, ironclad employment contract for her executive secretary position. Now, he weaponized it. When Nia handed in her official resignation letter, Carter simply smirked and slid a legal document across his new glass desk. He threatened a multi-million-dollar lawsuit for breach of contract, promising to drag her through the courts for years, drain her savings, and ruin her professional name before she could ever work anywhere else. Carter expected her to beg for mercy. He expected her to cry. But Nia refused to let him dictate her life or steal the career she truly loved. She knew she had enough personal wealth to handle a legal fight, and she knew one word to her new husband Renji would end Carter permanently. But Nia was stubborn and proud. She wanted to face Carter on her own terms, without running to the Mafia for help. Out of pure spite and a deep passion for her job, Nia looked Carter dead in the eye, took her resignation letter back, and walked right back to her desk. She agreed to stay, but she kept her new marriage to the dangerous syndicate boss a total secret. For months, she arrived at work every day with perfect poise, acting like the ultimate professional, while Carter used his corporate power to make her life a living hell, completely unaware of the monster he was truly poking. Following their confrontation, Carter turned the high-rise executive floor into a professional war zone. He was determined to break Nia's spirit, using his power as CEO to make her daily life as miserable as possible. He started dumping massive, impossible financial audits on her desk at 2 a.m, demanding they be perfectly finished by the start of the business day. He constantly changed the presentation slides right before major board meetings, trying to confuse her and make her look incompetent in front of the company's biggest investors. Carter used every dirty corporate trick he knew to push her to the edge, waiting eagerly for the day she would finally burst into tears or quit. But Nia remained entirely unbothered. No matter how many unfair tasks Carter threw her way, She executed every single one of them with flawless precision. If he gave her an audit at midnight, it was sitting on his desk by 7 in the morning, completely error-free. If he scrambled the meeting schedule, she adapted instantly without breaking a sweat. Her calm elegance and perfect poise under pressure drove Carter absolutely insane. He wanted to see her crumble, cry, or beg him for a break, but she never gave him the satisfaction. Instead, she treated his cruel mind games like an annoying fly, brushing them off with a quiet dignity that made him feel small. Nia simply kept her head high, completely matching his toxicity with unmatched professionalism. Every evening, the heavy corporate doors faded behind Nia as she returned to a completely different world. She drove away from the stressful high-rise to a large luxury estate, where her husband, Renji, treated her like a queen. At home, she did not have to be the stoic secretary fighting a quiet war. Renji took care of everything, making sure she could finally relax. But Renji was not just a loving husband, he was also a powerful Mafia boss, and he was fully aware of exactly who Carter Brooks was. In fact, Renji already had his eyes on Brooks Holdings, quietly watching the company's financial moves from the shadows. After one particularly brutal work week, Renji noticed the deep exhaustion that Nia was trying so hard to hide. As they sat together in their quiet living room, his dark eyes grew cold with anger. He looked at his wife and told her flatly that he could end Carter with just one phone call, removing the toxic billionaire from her life forever. But Nia immediately shook her head. She remained stubborn and proud, insisting on handling her own professional life without using his dangerous world to solve her problems. She wanted to defeat Carter using her own skills and intelligence, completely unaware that her arrogant boss was already planning a trap that would cross a dangerous physical line. It was late at night, and the high-rise office was completely empty. Carter had staged a trap under the guise of an emergency data leak audit, using it as an excuse to lock down the entire executive floor. With the security grid offline and the doors locked, he cornered Nia inside his private office. He stood before her and falsely accused her of corporate espionage, claiming she was stealing secret company files. Carter's plan was cruel. He wanted to use these fake charges to nullify her employment contract, fire her without pay, and completely ruin her professional reputation in the business world. Nia listened to his wild accusations with her usual calm expression. Realizing he was completely unhinged, she turned on her heel and tried to walk away. But seeing her dismiss him yet again caused Carter's narcissistic rage to peak. He lost all control, lunging forward to slam her hard against the glass partition. He tightly grabbed her wrist, twisting it until it hurt her. Nia stopped enduring. The silent patience she had maintained for months instantly vanished. With her free hand, she calmly reached up, tapped her wireless earpiece, and called her husband. "Ren?" she said, her voice freezing cold. "I am ready to go home, and Carter is hurting me." Seconds later, the executive elevator doors clicked open with a heavy sound. Renji stepped out into the dim office light, flanked by his broad-shouldered security team. The loving husband was gone. In his place stood a ruthless Mafia boss. Renji walked directly into the office, completely ignoring Carter as he gently freed Nia's wrist. He kissed her forehead and told her to wait downstairs. The moment the elevator doors closed behind Nia, Renji turned on Carter. The billionaire tried to speak, but Renji moved with terrifying speed. He grabbed Carter by his expensive tie and dragged him across the floor, lifting him up before slamming his face directly into his own custom glass desk. The thick glass shattered into 1,000 pieces with a loud crash. Renji gave the bleeding billionaire a brutal beatdown, destroying his office and his ego within minutes, leaving him sobbing in the wreckage of his own empire. The next morning, Carter returned to work with a heavily bandaged face, tight black stitches across his split lip, and a completely broken ego. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the terrifying news waiting on his desk. Overnight, Renji's syndicate had forced a hostile takeover, buying out a controlling share of Brooks Holdings' board of directors. Carter was no longer the true master of his empire. He was now just a puppet CEO, kept around to keep the stock market from crashing. A new daily regime of workplace terror began for the billionaire. The bold, arrogant boss, who used to shout orders, was completely gone. Now, Carter tiptoed through the executive floor, politely knocking on his own office door before entering. He spoke only in soft, submissive whispers whenever Nia was nearby, desperately trying to stay out of her way. Whenever Nia casually reached up to touch her wireless earpiece, Carter would instantly freeze, sweat soaking through his shirt as pure panic took over his body. He knew that a single word from her could bring the Mafia right back to his floor. Nia ruled the office with absolute quiet dominance, while Carter lived in constant fear of his own secretary. At exactly 5 o'clock in the evening, the heavy glass doors clicked open. Renji walked onto the executive floor to pick up his wife, looking calm and incredibly dangerous. He walked over to Nia's desk and gently helped her with her coat, his dark eyes softening only when he looked at her. Through the glass partition of his private office, Carter watched them, completely paralyzed with fear. Before leaving, Renji slowly turned his head and gave the billionaire a chilling smile. Nia slipped her hand into her husband's, and they walked toward the elevator together, leaving the billionaire permanently housebroken in his own empty high-rise.